It was a breezy spring afternoon, and the golden sunlight filtered through the canopy of oak trees in Crestwood Park. The sound of children laughing and the occasional bark of a dog filled the air, creating an atmosphere of peace. Jordan Harper, an aspiring artist with a sketchpad perpetually tucked under his arm, sat cross-legged on a worn bench near the fountain. Beside him was Liam Carter, his closest friend, a math prodigy with dreams of earning a scholarship to a prestigious university. "Check this out," Jordan said, holding up his latest sketch, a vivid depiction of the park's iconic clock tower. The drawing captured every intricate detail, from the ivy creeping up its stone walls to the pigeons perched precariously on the ledge. "It's amazing, man," Liam replied with a smile. "You got an eye for this. One day, people will pay big bucks for your art." Jordan laughed. "And you'll be calculating exactly how much they owe me." For the two friends, Crestwood Park was more than just a place to relax. It was their sanctuary, a pocket of calm in their otherwise chaotic lives. Jordan lived with his single mother, who worked double shifts at a diner to make ends meet. Liam, the eldest of 4 siblings, often took on the role of caretaker while his parents juggled multiple jobs. Despite their challenges, they shared a bond forged by their dreams and the unspoken understanding of what it meant to grow up as young black men in a town that often viewed them with suspicion. The town of Crestwood was a microcosm of America's fractured identity. Its neatly trimmed lawns and charming storefronts masked a history of racial tension that simmered beneath the surface. The older generation clung to outdated prejudices, while the younger ones grappled with the weight of inherited bias. Jordan and Liam knew all too well how quickly a calm day could spiral into something far darker. "I heard about another incident last week," Liam said, breaking the silence. Jordan's hand paused mid-sketch. "What happened?" "Some kid at East High was stopped by the cops for riding his bike home after dark. They said he looked suspicious." Liam shook his head, his frustration palpable. "It's always the same excuse." Jordan sighed. "You'd think we'd be past this by now." Their conversation was cut short as a soccer ball rolled toward them. A little boy, no older than 6, came running after it. Liam picked up the ball and tossed it back with a smile. "Thanks," the boy chirped before dashing back to his friends. For a moment, the world felt light again. But the shadow of unease lingered. As if the park itself was holding its breath, the clock struck 4. Its chimes echoing across the park. Jordan packed up his sketchpad, and Liam stretched lazily, ready to head home. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass. "Same time tomorrow?" Liam asked. "Wouldn't miss it," Jordan replied, as they walked toward the park's exit. Neither noticed the police cruiser idling by the curb. Inside, Officers Carter and Blake exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing as they watched the 2 young men leave. "Those 2 again," Blake muttered, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. "Let's keep an eye on them," Carter replied, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The stage was set, the players in place. What began as an ordinary day in Crestwood Park was about to take a turn that would alter the lives of Jordan and Liam forever. The next afternoon was much like the last, with Crestwood Park alive with its usual bustle. But this time, the calm was fractured. Jordan and Liam had barely settled onto their usual bench when the familiar, menacing rumble of a police cruiser broke through the park's harmony. Officers Carter and Blake stepped out of the car, their boots crunching against the gravel path. Carter was a tall man with sharp features and a practiced air of authority, while Blake was stockier, his every movement radiating a brash confidence. They weren't just officers, they were predators, scanning the park like it was their personal hunting ground. "There they are," Blake muttered, nodding toward Jordan and Liam. Carter adjusted his belt, where his badge gleamed in the sunlight. "Let's see what they're up to." As the officers approached, Jordan and Liam exchanged uneasy glances. They could feel the weight of the stairs even before the shadows of the 2 officers loomed over them. "You two," Carter barked. "What are you doing here?" Jordan looked up, his tone calm but firm. "We're sitting. Is there a problem?" Blake smirked. "Yeah, there's a problem. This bench isn't for loitering." "Loitering?" Liam repeated, his voice tinged with incredulity. "We've been sitting here for 5 minutes." Carter's expression hardened. "Don't get smart with me. Kid, I asked you a question." Jordan, feeling the familiar heat of indignation rise in his chest, held his ground. "We're not doing anything wrong." This is a public park. Blake's smirk twisted into something colder. Watch your tone. The tension thickened as Blake took a step closer, his hand resting on his belt. Maybe you didn't hear me. I said, get up and leave. Jordan rose slowly, his eyes locking with Blake's. Why should we leave? We've done nothing wrong. Blake's patience snapped. He shoved Jordan's shoulder, hard enough to make him stumble. I don't like your attitude. Hey, Liam shouted, standing up. You can't do that. Carter moved swiftly, grabbing Liam by the arm. Don't raise your voice at us. The scene drew the attention of nearby park-goers, who watched in hushed alarm. But no one moved to intervene. Jordan steadied himself, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. We're not leaving. We have every right to be here. Blake's face darkened. You want to play tough? Fine. He grabbed Jordan by the collar, dragging him off the path and toward a more secluded area of the park. Carter followed, dragging Liam along. What are you doing? Liam yelled, struggling against Carter's grip. Blake laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. Teaching you boys a lesson. They stopped near a cluster of trees, far from prying eyes. Blake shoved Jordan to the ground, his boots inches from Jordan's face. If you want to sit in this park, Blake sneered, you're gonna prove you deserve it. Kneel. Jordan stared up at him, defiance burning in his eyes. I'm not kneeling for you. Blake's smirk vanished. He kicked off one of his boots and held it out. Fine, then you can prove it another way. Go ahead. Lick my boot. Liam stepped forward, his voice shaking with fury. This is sick. You can't treat us like this. Carter, who had been leaning against a tree with an amused expression, pulled out his phone. This'll make for some great footage. Blake, he said with a chuckle. Blake ignored him, his focus on Jordan. Last chance. Either you lick the boot, or things get real ugly for you and your friend. Jordan's hands clenched into fists. His voice, though trembling, was resolute. I'd rather die standing than live kneeling. Blake's face contorted with rage. He dropped the boot and grabbed Jordan by the shirt, shaking him violently. You think you're better than me? Leave him alone, Liam shouted, lunging forward, but Carter shoved him back to the ground. Unbeknownst to the officers, a figure had been watching from the shadows. Ethan, the young journalist who had recorded the previous day's events, had followed Jordan and Liam out of curiosity. Now, hidden behind a tree, his hands shook as he filmed the scene with his phone. He knew the risks. Exposing officers like Carter and Blake would make him a target. But as he watched Jordan refuse to break, his resolve solidified. This has to stop. Ethan whispered to himself. The standoff ended abruptly when a woman's voice called out from the distance. Hey, what's going on over there? Blake froze, his grip on Jordan loosening. Carter quickly pocketed his phone, his face a mask of irritation. Let's go, Carter muttered. Blake glared at Jordan one last time before shoving him backward. You got lucky this time. As the officers walked away, Jordan and Liam sat on the ground, breathing heavily. Jordan looked at Liam, his voice strained but unbroken. This isn't over. Liam nodded, his jaw tight. Not by a long shot. The park had returned to its uneasy calm. But an unspoken tension lingered in the air. A few bystanders had seen snippets of what had happened. Some whispered to each other in hushed tones. Others avoided eye contact altogether, walking away as if nothing had occurred. Among them was Grace Reynolds, a middle-aged woman who had been sitting nearby with her young son. She had seen the officers drag Jordan and Liam into the secluded area but chose to stay silent. Her hands trembled as she held onto her son's shoulder, pulling him closer. Mom, the boy asked, his voice laced with confusion. Why didn't we help them? Grace's throat tightened. It's not our place. Honey, let's go. As she led her son away, guilt clung to her like a shadow. Ethan Gray was no stranger to fear. As a rookie journalist struggling to break into the competitive world of investigative reporting, he had often put himself in uncomfortable situations. But this was different. What he had witnessed wasn't just a story, it was an atrocity. He stayed hidden until Carter and Blake left, his heart pounding in his chest. His phone, now filled with damning footage, felt heavier in his pocket than it should have. Emerging cautiously, he saw Jordan and Liam still sitting on the ground. Ethan hesitated. Should he approach them? Or would it be better to stay in the background, ensuring he didn't complicate their ordeal further? Finally, he decided to stay hidden. For now. Jordan dusted himself off and helped Liam to his feet. They looked at each other, their expressions a mix of anger, frustration, and exhaustion. "This isn't right," Liam muttered, his voice cracking. "They can't get away with this." Jordan nodded, his jaw set. "They won't. We'll make sure of it." As they walked away, they noticed the onlookers. Some turned their backs, unwilling to meet their gaze. Others watched with a mixture of pity and discomfort. No one said a word. The silence was deafening. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his small apartment, replaying the footage on his phone. The video was raw and gut-wrenching. It showed Blake's sneering face, Carter's cruel laughter, and, most importantly, Jordan's unwavering defiance. Ethan's hands hovered over his laptop keyboard. Should he upload it? The thought of retaliation from the police made his stomach churn. But then he thought of Jordan and Liam, the fear in their eyes, the humiliation they had endured. "This can't stay hidden," he muttered to himself. Ethan uploaded the video to his personal blog with the title, "Abuse of Power, A Tale of Racism in Crestwood." By morning, the video had spread like wildfire. It was shared thousands of times on social media, sparking outrage and debate. Hashtags like #Justice for Jordan and Liam and #End Police Abuse began trending. While some people expressed shock and demanded justice, others tried to justify the office's actions, claiming the video didn't show the full story. The comments section was a battlefield. "This is disgusting. Those officers should be fired immediately. We don't know what led up to this. Maybe those kids were causing trouble. Racism is alive and well in this country. We need to act." Ethan's inbox flooded with messages, some from supporters, others from people accusing him of bias or sensationalism. When Liam saw the video, his first reaction was anger. Why would he post this without talking to us first? Jordan, however, saw the potential. Because people need to see what happened. This is bigger than us. Liam, their phones buzzed incessantly with calls and messages. Friends, family, and even strangers reached out to express their support, or, in some cases, their skepticism, but not all the attention was welcome. Liam's younger siblings were taunted at school. Jordan's mother received threatening calls, warning her son to stay quiet. "Jordan," she said one evening, her voice trembling, "I'm scared for you, for us." Jordan took her hand, his eyes filled with determination. "Mom, they can scare us, but they can't silence us." The town of Crestwood was thrown into turmoil. Supporters of Jordan and Liam, activists, teachers, and even some local businesses rallied around them, organizing vigils and protests. Defenders of Carter and Blake, some townsfolk claimed the officers were simply doing their jobs. Fueled by long-standing racial biases, the divide cut through families and friendships. Grace Reynolds, the woman from the park, found herself haunted by what she had seen. Her guilt finally pushed her to call a local activist group. "I was there," she confessed. "I saw everything." The police department released a statement downplaying the incident, claiming the video was edited to misrepresent the facts. Carter and Blake were placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Sergeant Marcus Kane, the police chief, held a press conference, his face stern. "We take these allegations seriously and will conduct a thorough review. But let me remind everyone, our officers put their lives on the line every day. Let's not rush to judgment." His words did little to quell the growing unrest despite the risks. Jordan and Liam decided to speak out publicly. At a hastily organized press conference, they addressed the crowd. Jordan stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady but impassioned. "We didn't ask for this fight, but we won't back down. What happened to us isn't just about two officers abusing their power. It's about a system that allows this to happen." Liam added, "We're standing up not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter. This stops now." Their words electrified the audience. The fight for justice had officially begun. Ethan refreshed his blog statistics for the 100th time. His modest platform, which usually garnered a few hundred views per post, had now surpassed 100,000 visitors in less than a day. Major outlets like the National Tribune and Global News Network had picked up the story, embedding his video in their reports. For Ethan, the sudden influx of attention was exhilarating and terrifying. His phone buzzed non-stop with messages, some congratulating him for his bravery, others laced with threats. Gray, his editor at the local newspaper, called him, "You've got something big here. Keep digging, but tread carefully. This isn't just a story anymore, it's a movement." by the second day. The story had transcended Crestwood. National news anchors dissected the video, interviewing legal experts, civil rights activists, and former police officers. Civil rights activist Angela Monroe. This is a textbook case of racial profiling and abuse of power. But what's worse is the silence of the community. This is systemic. Former officer John Mason. These officers went way beyond acceptable conduct. There's no excuse for what we saw in that video. Crestwood Mayor Claudia Hamilton. We're committed to ensuring a thorough investigation. But let's not divide our town further by jumping to conclusions. The video also sparked a wave of protests in larger cities, with demonstrators holding signs that read, "I stand with Jordan and Liam," and "Justice Now." The newfound attention brought with it a whirlwind of emotions for Jordan and Liam. Media frenzy. Journalists camped outside their homes, shouting questions as they left for school or errands. Threats. Both received anonymous calls and messages warning them to stay silent. Supporters. Strangers sent letters of encouragement, small gifts, and offers of legal help. One evening, as they met at Jordan's house to strategize, Jordan's mother walked in with a stack of letters. "You've got more today," she said, setting them on the table. "Some good, some not so good." Liam sifted through them, pulling out one that read, "You're tearing this town apart. Leave, or we'll make you leave." Jordan crumpled the letter and threw it aside. "They want us scared. It means we're doing something right." In Crestwood, the town was at a boiling point. The protests reached the city hall steps, where a crowd of hundreds demanded action. Supporters of Jordan and Liam organized vigils and peaceful demonstrations, often led by local teachers, activists, and even religious leaders. Pro-police counter-protests. A smaller but vocal group rallied with signs like, "Support our officers," and "Law and order first." One night, a protest outside the police department turned tense. A group of counter-protesters shouted insults, and a scuffle broke out. The scene was quickly quelled by riot police. But the damage was done. Division within the town was now undeniable. While Jordan and Liam bore the brunt of the attention, Ethan was not immune. One evening, he returned home to find his car vandalized. The words, "Traitor," spray painted across the side. He took a shaky breath, snapped a photo for evidence, and called the police. "Are you sure this isn't some sort of prank?" the officer on the line asked dismissively. Ethan clenched his jaw. "I'm a journalist. I posted the video of Carter and Blake. This isn't a prank." The officer sighed. "We'll send someone to look into it." The police never came despite the mounting pressure. Jordan and Liam found themselves surrounded by a growing network of supporters. Maya Bennett, a civil rights attorney with a reputation for taking on high-profile cases, reached out. "I want to help," she said during their first meeting. "This isn't just a case, it's a fight for accountability." Local activists. Groups like the Crestwood Equality Alliance began organizing workshops and rallies, giving Jordan and Liam a platform to share their story. Maya urged them to think strategically. "We need to build a case, not just in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion." Meanwhile, Carter and Blake's defenders grew increasingly aggressive. Their lawyers painted the officers as victims of a social media witch hunt. Public statements. "These officers have dedicated their lives to protecting Crestwood," one lawyer said during a press conference. "They deserve the benefit of the doubt." Discrediting the video, claims surfaced that the footage had been heavily edited, though no evidence was provided. Carter and Blake themselves maintained a low profile. But behind the scenes, they strategized. "This'll blow over," Carter muttered during a private meeting. "We just have to hold out until the public loses interest." Blake, however, was less composed. "If those kids think they can ruin us, they've got another thing coming." The story began inspiring others to come forward with their own experiences of police abuse, sparking a larger movement. Social media campaigns. Survivors shared their stories under hashtags like #MyJusticeJourney and #EndPoliceRacism. New evidence emerges. Journalists unearthed records of prior complaints against Carter and Blake, adding fuel to the fire. Ethan, invigorated by the momentum, continued his investigation. One lead pointed to a whistleblower within the police department, a potential game-changer. The video's continued circulation forced the Crestwood Police Department to take action. Chief Marcus Kane announced an internal review. But his words were met with skepticism. "We've heard this before," Maya told a local reporter. "Until we see real accountability. This is just damage control." At the same time, national advocacy groups pledged their support, organizing a massive rally in Crestwood to demand justice. As the public pressure mounted, so did the stakes. Maya gathered Jordan, Liam, and their families for a strategy meeting. "This won't be easy," she warned. "The system is designed to protect people like Carter and Blake. But with the right evidence and enough public support, we can win." Jordan nodded. "Whatever it takes," Liam added. "We're ready." For the first time since that fateful day in the park, they felt not just anger or fear, but hope. The meeting room in Maya Bennett's downtown law office was modest but filled with determination. Jordan and Liam sat across from her, their expressions a mix of anxiety and resolve. Stacks of case files and legal briefs surrounded Maya as she laid out her plan. "This is more than just a case about two officers," Maya began, her voice steady. "This is about the system that allows people like Carter and Blake to act without consequence. To win, we'll need evidence, witnesses, and, most importantly, a unified front." Jordan leaned forward. "What happens if we lose?" "We won't," Maya replied, her eyes fierce. "Not if we stick together and keep the truth on our side." Within days, Maya officially filed a civil rights lawsuit against officers Carter and Blake, the Crestwood Police Department, and the city itself. The lawsuit alleged racial profiling, excessive use of force, and systemic failure to discipline officers for misconduct. The news of the lawsuit reignited national attention. Protests swelled in size, with activists demanding not just justice for Jordan and Liam but broader police reform. Chief Marcus Kane faced mounting pressure as the lawsuit unfolded. During a press conference, he spoke carefully, attempting to balance public outrage with departmental loyalty. "We take these allegations seriously," he said. "An independent investigation is underway, and we will cooperate fully with the legal process." Behind closed doors, the department worked tirelessly to protect its image. Officers close to Carter and Blake were instructed to keep quiet, while the department's lawyers began crafting a defense centered on protocol adherence and public safety. The lawsuit divided Crestwood further. Pro-law enforcement groups rallied around Carter and Blake, calling them heroes under attack, and organizing fundraisers for their legal fees. Activist movements expanded their efforts, holding marches, sit-ins, and community discussions. Media outlets debated the case endlessly. Some conservative pundits argued that Jordan and Liam were exaggerating for attention, while progressive voices highlighted the systemic issues exposed by the video. One headline read, "Crestwood on trial, a town divided by justice." Maya and her team worked relentlessly to build their case. The video, Ethan's footage, was the cornerstone, but Maya warned it might not be enough. "They'll argue it's out of context," she said. Witness testimonies. Grace Reynolds, the bystander who initially stayed silent, agreed to testify. "I can't live with myself if I don't speak up," she told Maya. Officer records. Digging into Carter and Blake's histories, Maya uncovered a trail of complaints, most dismissed without investigation. One night, Maya received an anonymous tip. The caller, identifying themselves only as Alex, claimed to be a former officer with knowledge of Carter and Blake's misconduct. "They've been protected for years," Alex said. "I have proof." As the legal battle gained momentum, Jordan and Liam faced escalating harassment. Anonymous letters appeared in their mailboxes, filled with racial slurs and threats. One evening, a brick was thrown through Jordan's bedroom window, shattering glass across his desk. His mother rushed into the room, her face pale with fear. "Jordan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "maybe we should move. This isn't safe." "No, Mom," Jordan said firmly. "That's what they want. We're not running." A peaceful march outside the police department turned chaotic when counter-protesters showed up. The two groups clashed, leading to several arrests and injuries. The media painted the scene as a riot, further polarizing public opinion. Liam, who attended the march, returned home with a bruised arm and a heavy heart. "They're trying to make us look like the bad guys," he told Jordan. Jordan nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we'll show them the truth." Every step of the way, Ethan continued his investigation, determined to uncover more about Carter and Blake. During his research, he connected with Alex, The anonymous whistleblower. Meeting in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. Alex revealed documents and emails that painted a damning picture of the Crestwood Police Department. It's not just Carter and Blake, Alex said. The whole system protects officers like them. Ethan handed the information over to Maya, who immediately saw its potential. This could blow the case wide open. She said the pre-trial hearings were tense. Carter and Blake's lawyers argued that the case should be dismissed, claiming insufficient evidence and public bias. Maya countered with a blistering argument, using the video, the office's records, and preliminary witness statements to prove the case had merit. The judge ruled in her favor, setting a trial date 6 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters cheered as Maya, Jordan, and Liam emerged. This is just the beginning, Maya told reporters. The fight for justice is far from over. As the trial date approached, the stress began to weigh heavily on Jordan and Liam. Jordan struggled with nightmares about the confrontation, waking up drenched in sweat. Liam became more withdrawn, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. During a quiet moment, Liam confided in Jordan, "What if this doesn't change anything? What if they get away with it?" Jordan placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Then we keep fighting, not just for us, but for everyone who's been through this." Despite the challenges, small victories kept their spirits alive. Community fundraisers helped cover legal expenses, while local artists created murals depicting Jordan and Liam as symbols of resilience. One mural, painted on the side of a downtown building, showed them standing tall beneath the words, "Dignity cannot be broken." Liam stared at the mural one evening, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We're not alone in this, are we?" Jordan shook his head. "Not anymore." Maya Bennett's office had become a war room. Whiteboards lined the walls, filled with timelines, notes, and potential witnesses. The team of legal assistants worked tirelessly, combing through every detail of the case. Maya addressed the team during a late-night meeting. "The evidence we have is strong, but we need to anticipate their defense. Carter and Blake's lawyers will go after Jordan and Liam's credibility, and they'll try to paint the video as misleading. We can't leave any stone unturned." She turned to Ethan, who had joined them as a key collaborator. "What else do you have?" Ethan placed a folder on the table. "Documents from Alex, the whistleblower. They show a clear pattern of misconduct covered up by the department. Internal memos, emails, and even complaints from other officers." Maya's eyes lit up. "This could be our smoking gun." As Maya dug into the records, a troubling pattern emerged. Multiple complaints. Both officers had been reported numerous times for excessive force, racial profiling, and intimidation. No accountability. Each complaint had been dismissed or resolved internally. A previous incident. Blake had been involved in a similar case years ago, where another young black man accused him of assault. The case was quietly dropped due to lack of evidence. "This isn't just about Jordan and Liam," Maya told her team. "This is about a system that's been failing for years." Maya worked to secure testimonies from witnesses who could strengthen their case. Grace Reynolds, the bystander who initially hesitated to speak up, finally agreed to testify. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said. Ethan Gray, as the journalist who recorded the video, Ethan's testimony would establish its authenticity. Other victims. Maya reached out to individuals who had previously filed complaints against Carter and Blake, convincing two to come forward. During a prep session, Grace sat nervously across from Maya. "What if they attack my credibility? What if they say I'm lying?" "They will," Maya said bluntly, "but the truth is on our side. Stick to what you saw, and they won't be able to shake you." Carter and Blake's legal team, led by high-profile attorney Thomas Aldridge, began their counterattack, smearing Jordan and Liam. They dug into their school records and social media, looking for anything that could paint them as troublemakers. Challenging the video, Aldridge claimed the footage was selectively edited and lacked context. Discrediting witnesses. Attempts were made to intimidate Grace and the other victims, sending them threatening anonymous messages. One evening, Maya received a frantic call from Grace. "Someone left a note on my car," she said, her voice shaking. It said, "Stay quiet, or else." Maya reassured her, "This is exactly why we need your voice. Don't let them win." While reviewing Alex's documents late one night, Ethan found something shocking. A series of emails between Carter and Blake that revealed their deliberate targeting of young black men in Crestwood. One email read, "Another one for the quota. These kids think they own the park." Ethan immediately forwarded the emails to Maya. "This is it," he said. "This proves intent." Maya was cautiously optimistic. "It's damning, but we'll need to authenticate these emails before using them in court." As the case built momentum, the community rallied around Jordan and Liam. Protests grew. Marches and vigils became daily occurrences, drawing supporters from neighboring towns. Artists and activists united. A large mural was painted near the courthouse, depicting Jordan and Liam standing tall with the words, "We will not be broken." Fundraising. Donations poured in to support the legal battle, including contributions from national civil rights organizations. At one rally, Jordan stood before a crowd of hundreds. "This fight isn't just ours, it's for everyone who's been silenced. Everyone who's been told their lives don't matter. We won't stop until justice is served." The crowd erupted into cheers, their chants echoing through the streets. Despite the growing support, Jordan and Liam faced constant harassment. Threats escalated. Their families received anonymous letters, some containing veiled threats. Physical intimidation. One night, Liam's younger brother was followed home from school by an unknown car. Liam's parents considered moving out of Crestwood, but Liam convinced them to stay. "If we leave, they win," he said. The stress began to take its toll on Jordan and Liam. Jordan withdrew into his sketching, pouring his emotions into vivid, haunting images of oppression and resilience. Liam struggled with anger, often snapping at friends and family. During one late-night conversation, Liam confessed to Jordan, "Sometimes I wonder if this is worth it. What if nothing changes?" Jordan looked at him, his expression resolute. "It's worth it because it has to be. If we don't stand up, who will?" Alex, the anonymous whistleblower, agreed to meet Maya in person. They handed over additional documents, including audio recordings of conversations between officers that revealed blatant racism and abuse of power. In one recording, Blake's voice was unmistakable. "They're all the same, cocky until you put them in their place." Maya listened, her face a mixture of anger and determination. "This will destroy their defense," she said as the trial date approached. Maya prepared her team and witnesses for the intense scrutiny they would face. Mock trials. Maya ran simulations to prepare Jordan, Liam, and the other witnesses for cross-examination. Media strategy. Ethan and other activists worked to keep public attention focused on the case, countering the defense's narrative. At the final prep meeting, Maya addressed the group. "This won't be easy. They'll throw everything they have at us. But we have the truth. And we have each other. That's how we win." Jordan and Liam exchanged a glance. For the first time in weeks, they felt a spark of hope. The courtroom was packed to capacity on the first day of the trial. The air buzzed with tension as reporters, activists, and Crestwood residents crowded the gallery. At the center of it all sat Jordan and Liam, their faces a mixture of nerves and determination. Behind them, their families offered silent support, while Maya Bennett, calm and focused, organized her notes at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Carter and Blake sat with their high-profile defense team, their expressions unreadable. As the trial commenced, the prosecution wasted no time establishing the gravity of the case. Maya opened with a powerful statement, recounting the events at Crestwood Park and framing the lawsuit as a fight not just for Jordan and Liam but for every victim of racial injustice. "This is a case about dignity," Maya said, her voice steady and resolute. "About the rights of two young men to exist in a public space without fear of harassment or humiliation. And it is about holding those in power accountable when they violate that trust." Thomas Aldridge, the lead defense attorney, countered with a polished argument, asserting that the officers had acted within their rights and accusing the plaintiffs of sensationalizing the incident. "Law enforcement is a dangerous job," Aldridge said. "Officers must make split-second decisions to ensure public safety. The video shown to the public is incomplete and does not reflect the full context of the situation." Maya's first move was to play the video recorded by Ethan. The gallery fell silent as the footage filled the courtroom, showing the moment Blake demanded that Jordan kneel and lick his boot. The sneering tone of Blake's voice, the visible defiance in Jordan's eyes, and the raw tension between the officers and the two young men were laid bare. The defense objected. claiming the video lacked context. But the judge overruled, allowing it as evidence. It was a moment that set the tone for the trial. Jordan was the first to take the stand. He spoke with a measured tone, recounting the events of that day with clarity and resolve. "They didn't approach us to keep the peace," he said, his voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. "They approached us to assert their power, to humiliate us." The defense attempted to rattle him during cross-examination, bringing up minor incidents from his school record. But Jordan remained composed. "Those have nothing to do with what happened in the park," he replied firmly. "I was targeted because of my skin color, not my grades." Liam's testimony followed, his anger barely concealed as he described being manhandled and threatened. "They dragged us away like criminals," he said. "And for what? Sitting on a bench? They treated us like we were less than human." The defense pressed him, implying that his reaction to the officers escalated the situation. Liam fired back, his voice steady. "Respect is a two-way street. They showed none, and they earned none." Maya called Grace Reynolds to the stand next. Nervous but resolute, Grace recounted what she had seen from her spot in the park. "I saw two young men minding their own business. And I saw two officers go out of their way to intimidate them," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I didn't say anything then. And I regret that every day. But I'm saying it now." The defense attacked Grace's credibility, suggesting her memory was unreliable and accusing her of seeking attention. Grace held her ground. "I'm here because it's the right thing to do," she said firmly, "not because it's easy." Ethan's turn on the stand was pivotal. He authenticated the video, explaining how he had recorded it and uploaded it to his blog. Under Maya's guidance, Ethan presented the additional emails and documents he had uncovered, which revealed a troubling culture within the Crestwood Police Department. The defense tried to paint Ethan as biased and opportunistic, but he remained unshaken. "I didn't create this story," Ethan said. "I just made sure people saw it." The prosecution's most explosive moment came when Maya called Alex, the whistleblower, to testify. Wearing a crisp suit and speaking with deliberate clarity, Alex outlined years of systemic misconduct within the department. The courtroom murmured as Alex described a culture of racial profiling and a lack of accountability. He played audio recordings of conversations among officers, including Blake's mocking comments about teaching those kids a lesson. The recordings were damning, leaving Carter and Blake visibly uncomfortable. The defense's case hinged on discrediting the plaintiffs and reframing the office's actions as necessary for maintaining order. Aldridge called several officers to testify, each delivering carefully rehearsed statements about the challenges of their job and the need for quick decision-making. But under Maya's cross-examination, cracks began to show. One officer admitted that Carter and Blake had a reputation for roughing people up, though he claimed it was exaggerated. Another conceded that he had witnessed Blake's temper flare during previous incidents. Blake himself took the stand, his demeanor shifting between defiance and feigned remorse. He denied the accusations of racism, claiming his actions were misinterpreted, and insisting that he had only been trying to defuse a potentially volatile situation. Maya's cross-examination was relentless. She presented the emails and recordings, forcing Blake to confront his own words. "Is this your voice?" she asked, playing the audio of him mocking Jordan and Liam. Blake hesitated, his face reddening. "Yes," he admitted reluctantly, but it was taken out of context. The trial's most dramatic moment came when Maya revealed a piece of evidence that had been kept under wraps until the perfect time. An internal report from years prior showing that both Carter and Blake had been investigated for misconduct but were cleared due to insufficient evidence. The report included testimony from other officers who described a pattern of behavior strikingly similar to what Jordan and Liam had experienced. "This isn't an isolated incident," Maya said, her voice sharp. "This is a pattern of abuse." As the trial neared its conclusion, the courtroom was gripped by tension. In her closing argument, Maya appealed to the jury's sense of justice. "Jordan and Liam are not just plaintiffs," she said. "They are sons, brothers, friends, human beings who were treated as less than that. This case isn't just about what happened in Crestwood Park. It's about ensuring it doesn't happen again." Aldridge's closing statement sought to sow doubt. "We must consider the full picture," he argued. "Officers Carter and Blake made mistakes, but they are not the monsters they've been made out to be. Let's not let emotions cloud our judgment." The jury deliberated for 2 tense days, When they returned with a verdict, the courtroom fell silent. The judge read the decision. Carter and Blake were found guilty of violating Jordan and Liam's civil rights. The jury also held the police department liable for fostering a culture that enabled such behavior. The gallery erupted in applause, and Jordan and Liam hugged their families, tears streaming down their faces. As they stepped outside the courthouse, the crowd of supporters cheered. Reporters swarmed them, but Jordan raised his hand for silence. "This isn't just our victory," he said. "It's a step toward justice for everyone who's been silenced. The fight isn't over, but today, we proved that change is possible." The courthouse steps became a scene of celebration and resolve. Jordan and Liam had won their battle, but they knew the war for justice was far from over. Still, for the first time in weeks, they felt hope, and hope, they realized, was the most powerful weapon of all in the weeks following the trial. The ripple effects of the verdict were felt far beyond Crestwood. News outlets hailed it as a landmark case, one that exposed not just the actions of two officers but the systemic failures of an entire police department. Across the country, discussions about police reform intensified, with Jordan and Liam's story at the center. For Jordan and Liam, the aftermath was both a relief and a new challenge. The courtroom victory was just one step in a much larger journey. They quickly realized that while the verdict had brought them justice, it had also placed them in the spotlight in ways they hadn't anticipated. The first major shift came with the town of Crestwood itself. The police department, already under scrutiny, faced protests outside its headquarters daily. Signs demanding broader accountability filled the streets. "Justice is just the start, and reform now." Chief Marcus Kane, once a staunch defender of the department, announced sweeping changes, including the immediate suspension of several officers implicated in Alex's whistleblower testimony. One evening, Marcus held a town hall to address the community. Standing at the podium, his face was etched with the weariness of a man trying to save a crumbling institution. "What happened to Jordan and Liam was unacceptable," he said, his voice steady. "It exposed flaws in our department that can no longer be ignored. Effective immediately, we are implementing mandatory bias training, body cameras for all officers, and an independent oversight committee." The announcement was met with cautious applause. While some residents were hopeful, others remained skeptical. "Talk is cheap," one protester shouted from the back. "We want action." For Jordan and Liam, the town hall was a bittersweet moment. "At least they're doing something," Liam said as they walked home. Jordan nodded but remained thoughtful. "It's a start," he replied, "but it won't fix what we've been through." Their lives continued to change in other, more personal ways. Jordan, once hesitant to speak publicly, found himself invited to panels, podcasts, and conferences to share his story. Though he was initially nervous, he discovered a new kind of power in his words. At a university event in a neighboring city, he stood before a packed auditorium and recounted the moment he refused to kneel. "They wanted to take my dignity," he told the audience, "but dignity isn't something you can take, it's something you refuse to give up." The crowd erupted in applause, and Jordan realized that his voice could inspire others to stand up for their rights. Liam, meanwhile, channeled his energy into local activism. He partnered with grassroots organizations to mentor young people in Crestwood, particularly those who had faced similar experiences with law enforcement. "We have to build something better," he told a group of teenagers at a workshop. "The system is broken, but we don't have to let it break us." Not everyone celebrated their newfound roles. Carter and Blake, now disgraced, still had supporters who believed they had been unfairly vilified. Anonymous threats continued to trickle in, and one evening, Jordan's mother found a spray-painted message on their garage door: "You'll regret this." The incident reignited her fears, and she sat Jordan down at the kitchen table. "You've already done so much," she said, her voice trembling. "Maybe it's time to step back. Stay safe." Jordan reached for her hand, his expression firm yet compassionate. "Mom, if I back down now, they win. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about everyone who's ever been treated like we were." Despite the challenges, their resilience inspired others to join the movement. Grace Reynolds, emboldened by her testimony, started organizing weekly community meetings to discuss racial equity and police accountability. Ethan Gray, propelled by the success of his blog, began working on a documentary about the case. aiming to keep the story alive in the public consciousness. The turning point came when Maya received a call from a national civil rights organization. "Your work in Crestwood has opened a lot of eyes," the representative said. "We'd like to partner with you, and with Jordan and Liam, to push for federal legislation addressing police reform." The news was both thrilling and daunting. Maya convened a meeting with Jordan, Liam, and their families to discuss the opportunity. "This is bigger than anything we've done so far," she said, "but it's also going to put a lot more pressure on all of us." Jordan and Liam didn't hesitate. "We're in," Liam said, his voice filled with determination. "Whatever it takes." In the months that followed, they embarked on a whirlwind journey across the country. They spoke at rallies, met with lawmakers, and worked alongside activists to draft the Equal Justice Act, a bill aimed at increasing police transparency and accountability nationwide. The process was grueling, filled with setbacks and opposition from powerful lobbying groups. But Jordan and Liam's story resonated, and their presence brought a human face to the issue. One memorable moment occurred during a televised congressional hearing, where Jordan testified before a panel of senators, facing a row of stern faces. He recounted the events at Crestwood Park and the subsequent trial. "I shouldn't have to be here," he said, his voice unwavering. "But as long as people like Carter and Blake can abuse their power without fear of consequences, I will be here. We all will." His words went viral, sparking renewed momentum for the bill. Support poured in from activists, celebrities, and ordinary citizens who saw themselves in Jordan and Liam's struggle. Finally, after months of advocacy, the Equal Justice Act passed in Congress. The victory was celebrated across the country, with rallies and marches marking the occasion. In Crestwood, the community gathered at the park where it all began, now renamed Harper Carter Park in honor of Jordan and Liam's courage. As Jordan and Liam stood before the crowd, the weight of their journey settled on their shoulders. "This isn't the end," Jordan said, addressing the gathered supporters. "It's the beginning of something bigger. We've shown that change is possible. But there's so much more to do." Liam stepped forward, a small smile on his face. "We started as two kids sitting on a bench. Now we're part of a movement. And we won't stop until everyone has the freedom to sit anywhere, without fear." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing through the park. For Jordan and Liam, it was a moment of triumph. Not just for themselves but for the countless others who had stood beside them. They had turned their pain into power, their struggle into hope, and in doing so, they had changed not just their own lives but the lives of so many others. As they left the stage, their steps felt lighter. The fight wasn't over, but they were ready for whatever came next. Together, they had proven that even the smallest acts of defiance could spark a revolution. The transformation of Crestwood was slow but undeniable. The park, now renamed Harper Carter Park, became a symbol of resilience and change. A bronze plaque at the entrance commemorated the events that had unfolded there, inscribed with the words, "Dignity cannot be broken." Visitors from neighboring towns came to see the park and learn about the story of Jordan and Liam, whose courage had ignited a national movement. Jordan and Liam returned to their routines, but their lives were far from normal. They had become public figures, their every move scrutinized by both supporters and detractors. Despite the pressure, they remained committed to their mission, using their platform to advocate for justice and equality. For Jordan, art became both a refuge and a weapon. His sketches, once private expressions of his emotions, evolved into powerful visual commentaries on social justice. A piece he created, titled "Unbroken," depicting two figures standing tall against a storm, was featured in a national art exhibition. The recognition was overwhelming, but Jordan stayed grounded. "Art is my way of telling our story," he said in an interview. "If it inspires someone to stand up for what's right, then it's worth it." Liam, on the other hand, found his calling in mentorship. He joined a local youth organization, helping at-risk teens navigate the challenges of growing up in a system that often seemed stacked against them. "When I was their age," Liam told Jordan one afternoon, "I didn't think anyone would stand up for me. Now I want to be that person for them." Their friendship, tested and strengthened by the ordeal, remained unshakable. They often returned to Harper Carter Park, sitting on the very bench where their story began. "Funny how this place feels different now," Liam remarked one day. "It used to be just a park. Now it feels like, I don't know, ours." It is ours, Jordan replied with a small smile. We earned that. The national impact of their story continued to unfold. The passage of the Equal Justice Act brought sweeping changes, including the establishment of independent oversight boards for police departments and mandatory training programs to address implicit bias. While the legislation was a significant step forward, it also faced resistance from opponents who viewed it as an overreach. Jordan and Liam were undeterred, joining forces with activists across the country to ensure the law was implemented effectively. Ethan Gray's documentary, Crestwood Rising, premiered at a major film festival to critical acclaim. The film combined footage of the trial with interviews from Jordan, Liam, and other key players, capturing the raw emotion and complexity of their journey. In a post-screening Q&A, Ethan shared what had driven him to tell their story. I saw two young men refuse to be broken, he said, and I realized that their fight wasn't just theirs, it was ours. The documentary's success brought even more attention to the movement, sparking conversations in classrooms, boardrooms, and city halls across the nation. Jordan and Liam attended the premiere, sitting quietly in the audience as the film unfolded. By the end, both were in tears. It's strange seeing it all like this, Jordan admitted, like it happened to someone else. But it didn't, Liam replied. It happened to us, and we made it through. Not everyone embraced the change. Carter and Blake, though convicted, became rallying points for a small but vocal group that viewed them as scapegoats. Online forums buzzed with conspiracy theories and calls for their release. The backlash was a constant reminder that the fight for justice was far from over. Still, there were victories. The Crestwood Police Department, under the leadership of Chief Marcus Kane, implemented a series of reforms that became a model for other towns. Kane, once skeptical of the movement, acknowledged its impact during a public address. This department failed Jordan and Liam, he admitted, and in doing so, we failed our entire community. Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. One of the most profound moments came when Alex, the whistleblower, was honored at a community event. Standing on the same stage as Jordan and Liam, Alex received a standing ovation. It wasn't easy to come forward, Alex said, voice shaking, but seeing what these two have accomplished made it worth it. They gave me the courage to do what was right. As the months turned into years, Jordan and Liam's lives continued to evolve. Jordan was accepted into a prestigious art school, where he planned to use his talent to keep telling stories that mattered. Liam, inspired by his mentorship work, began studying to become a social worker. Both remained active in the movement, often speaking at events and working with organizations pushing for broader reforms. On the second anniversary of the trial, a massive rally was held at Harper Carter Park. Thousands of people gathered to celebrate the progress made and to recommit to the work still ahead. Jordan and Liam took the stage together, their voices steady and strong. This isn't about us, Liam told the crowd. It's about everyone who's ever felt like their voice didn't matter. It's about proving that no matter how small you feel, you can make a difference. Jordan nodded, adding, we didn't ask to be part of this fight, but it's one we're proud to stand in. And we'll keep standing until every park bench, every street corner, every space in this country is a place where everyone belongs. The crowd roared in agreement, their cheers echoing through the park. As Jordan and Liam stepped down from the stage, they looked at each other and smiled. The fight wasn't over, but they were ready for whatever came next. Together in the years that followed the trial, Jordan and Liam's lives became a tapestry of personal growth, advocacy, and hope. Their journey, once confined to the small town of Crestwood, had evolved into a national symbol of resilience and reform. Yet, as they embraced their new roles, they remained deeply connected to their roots and the people who had stood by them. Jordan's admission to art school opened a world of possibilities. His talent flourished, and his work became a reflection of the social issues he was passionate about. One of his most celebrated pieces, The Bench, depicted two figures, young, vulnerable, but unyielding, sitting under a canopy of towering shadows. The piece was displayed in galleries across the country, earning him accolades and a platform to speak about the transformative power of art. At an exhibition opening in New York, he addressed a captivated audience. Art can tell stories that words can't, he said. It can challenge, inspire, and remind us of our shared humanity. That's what I want my work to do. Liam's path led him into social work. After completing his degree, He returned to Crestwood to launch a youth outreach program aimed at empowering teenagers, particularly those from marginalized communities. The program, named Stand Tall, provided mentorship, education, and a safe space for young people to share their struggles. "We're here to make sure you know your worth," Liam often told the teens, "because no one should ever make you feel like you're less than anyone else." Their work kept them busy, but they made time to reconnect regularly at Harper Carter Park. Sitting on their bench, they often reflected on how far they had come. "You ever think about how this all started?" Liam asked during one of their visits. "A couple of kids just trying to sit and relax." Jordan chuckled, shaking his head. "And now look at us, changing laws, giving speeches. Who would have thought?" Their friendship, tested by adversity, remained as strong as ever. Together, they continued to advocate for justice and equality, their voices now amplified by the platforms they had built. The reforms sparked by their case gained traction across the country. The Equal Justice Act inspired similar legislation at the state level, and communities began to hold their police departments accountable in unprecedented ways. Independent oversight boards became the norm, and officers faced stricter consequences for misconduct. Crestwood's transformation became a model for others. Under Chief Marcus Kane's leadership, the police department underwent a cultural shift. Kane retired a few years later, but not before ensuring that new policies were firmly in place. At his retirement ceremony, he acknowledged Jordan and Liam's impact. "You forced us to confront our failures," he said, "and because of you, we're better." Not everyone embraced the changes. Opposition groups continued to push back, using social media to sow doubt and division. Carter and Blake, though disgraced, retained a small but vocal group of supporters who insisted they had been scapegoated. Both men relocated after serving their sentences, avoiding public attention but occasionally stirring controversy with inflammatory comments on fringe platforms. Jordan and Liam learned to navigate the negativity, focusing on the progress they had helped create. "The louder they scream, the more it shows we're doing something right," Liam often said. Harper Carter Park became a pilgrimage site for activists and advocates. Every year, a commemorative event was held there, drawing people from across the country to celebrate progress and reflect on the work still to be done. The event became known as the Gathering of Hope, with Jordan and Liam as its honored guests. During the 5th annual gathering, Jordan unveiled a new sculpture, a towering steel and bronze monument depicting hands reaching upward, inscribed with the words, "Hope is a movement, and it belongs to all of us." The crowd erupted in applause as Jordan explained the inspiration behind it. "This monument isn't just for me and Liam," he said, "it's for everyone who has ever stood up, spoken out, and refused to be silenced." Jordan and Liam's story inspired countless others to take action. Activists, artists, and educators cited them as examples of how individuals could spark systemic change. A wave of young leaders emerged, many of whom credited Jordan and Liam with giving them the courage to fight for justice in their own communities. One such leader, a teenager named Kayla Johnson, approached Jordan after a rally. "Your story changed my life," she said, her voice trembling. "Because of you, I started organizing protests at my school. We're fighting for a more inclusive curriculum." Jordan smiled, humbled by her words. "Keep going," he said, "you're the future, Kayla, and the world needs your voice." As the years passed, Jordan and Liam's influence only grew. Their lives intertwined with the movement they had helped create, but they never lost sight of who they were. They remained grounded, finding joy in small moments, family dinners, late-night conversations, and quiet walks in the park that bore their names. One evening, as the sun set over Harper Carter Park, Liam turned to Jordan. "Do you think we've done enough?" he asked. Jordan considered the question, gazing at the horizon. "I think we've done what we could," he said. "But enough? That's not for us to decide. That's for the people who come after us." Liam nodded, a soft smile on his face. "Well, whoever they are, I hope they sit on this bench and know they belong." As the park lights flickered on, the two friends sat in comfortable silence, watching as families and children filled the space they had fought to reclaim. It was a quiet but profound moment, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope could thrive. Jordan and Liam's story was far from over, but it had already left an indelible mark. They had proven that change was possible, that courage could overcome fear, and that even the smallest acts of defiance could spark a movement. Together, they had turned their pain into progress, their struggle into strength, and in doing so, they had shown the world what it meant to truly stand tall. The impact of Jordan and Liam's story continued to ripple outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. What began as a small act of defiance in Crestwood had transformed into a global conversation about justice, dignity, and systemic change. Their courage inspired not just policies but also a cultural shift, fostering empathy and solidarity among diverse communities. The annual Gathering of Hope expanded beyond Crestwood, with sister events held in cities around the world. These gatherings became platforms for survivors of injustice to share their stories and for communities to unite in the fight for equity. Jordan and Liam, though still central figures, often stepped back to make space for others. At the 10th Gathering of Hope, Liam took the stage with a group of teenagers from his Stand Tall program. He introduced one of them, a young woman named Maria, who had overcome immense adversity to become a student leader in her school. Maria's story reminds us why we do this work, Liam said, his voice filled with pride. Because when we stand tall, we give others the strength to rise too. The crowd gave Maria a standing ovation as she shared her journey, her voice trembling but resolute. Because of this movement, I know my worth, she said, and I'll make sure no one ever takes that away from me. Jordan's art gained international recognition, with his pieces featured in exhibitions across Europe, Asia, and Africa. He often traveled to speak at openings, using the opportunity to highlight the intersections of art and activism. At a gallery in Berlin, he unveiled a new series titled Faces of Change, portraits of ordinary people who had stood up against injustice in their communities. One of the pieces depicted an elderly woman holding a protest sign, her weathered face radiating quiet determination. "This is Mrs. Eunice from Crestwood," Jordan explained to the audience. "She brought sandwiches to protesters every day during the trial. Even when she was told to stay out of it, she's proof that every action, no matter how small, matters." The series was hailed as a masterpiece, with critics calling it a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Amid their work, Jordan and Liam celebrated personal milestones that reminded them of the joys of everyday life. Jordan's mother, once fearful of the attention her son had drawn, watched with pride as he graduated from art school. At the ceremony, Jordan dedicated his diploma to her. "Everything I've achieved is because of you, Mom," he said, embracing her tightly. Liam, meanwhile, found love and started a family of his own. His wife, Erica, shared his passion for community work, and together they created programs that combined her expertise in education with his experience in social advocacy. Their home became a hub of activity, often filled with laughter, the chatter of young mentees, and the cries of their first child, a daughter they named Hope. "She's going to grow up in a better world," Liam said one evening as he rocked Hope to sleep. "And we're going to make sure of it." The road wasn't without its challenges. Carter and Blake's supporters occasionally resurfaced, attempting to undermine the movement through disinformation campaigns. At one point, a fabricated video circulated online, claiming to show Jordan and Liam antagonizing the officers before the incident in the park. Though quickly debunked, the video reignited old tensions. Maya Bennett, ever the vigilant advocate, addressed the controversy during a press conference. "This movement is bigger than lies and distractions," she said. "The truth has already been spoken, and it will not be silenced." Despite these setbacks, the victories far outweighed the challenges. New policies inspired by the Equal Justice Act continued to roll out across the country. Police departments adopted community-centered approaches, and the voices of marginalized communities were amplified in decision-making processes. To solidify their legacy, Jordan and Liam partnered with Maya and other leaders to establish the Crestwood Center for Justice, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing equity and educating future generations. The center offered workshops, legal aid, and artistic programs, blending their passions into a single mission. The opening ceremony was a moment of profound emotion. Jordan and Liam stood side by side as they cut the ribbon. Surrounded by family, friends, and supporters, "This center isn't just for us," Jordan said, addressing the crowd. "It's for everyone who believes in justice, who fights for it, and who dares to hope for a better tomorrow." Years later, Jordan and Liam returned to Harper Carter Park for a quiet reunion. The park had become a vibrant gathering place. Its once faded benches now painted with murals depicting messages of hope and unity. Children laughed as they played on the swings, their parents chatting nearby. It was a scene that felt both familiar and transformed. Sitting on their bench, Jordan pulled out his sketchpad, a habit he had never abandoned. "You still sketching that clock tower?" Liam teased. "Always," Jordan replied with a grin, shading the outline of the park's iconic feature. "Some things never change." Liam leaned back, watching the sunset. "You think we did enough?" he asked, echoing a question he had posed years ago. Jordan paused, considering the question. "We started something," he said finally, "and it's bigger than us now. That's enough for me." The two friends sat in companionable silence as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. They didn't need words to know that their journey, though filled with challenges, had been worth every step. Together, they had turned a moment of injustice into a lifetime of impact, proving that even the smallest acts of defiance could create waves of change. Years turned into decades. But the story of Jordan and Liam remained etched in the collective memory of Crestwood and far beyond. What began as a confrontation in a small park had grown into a movement that reshaped institutions, inspired generations, and redefined what it meant to stand for justice. The Crestwood Center for Justice became a beacon for reform. It expanded its reach, establishing satellite centers in other cities and collaborating with international organizations. Through scholarships, legal aid, and cultural exchange programs, the center empowered thousands of young leaders from diverse backgrounds. One such leader, Aisha Mbali, a student from South Africa, credited the center with giving her the tools to fight against injustices in her own community. During a speech at the United Nations, she cited Jordan and Liam as her inspiration. "Their courage reminds us that even in the darkest moments, we have the power to create light," she said. The Equal Justice Act, initially seen as a controversial piece of legislation, became a blueprint for other countries seeking to address systemic inequalities in law enforcement. Conferences and think tanks frequently highlighted the Crestwood story as an example of grassroots movements driving global change. Jordan's artistic career flourished, but he remained deeply connected to his roots. His gallery exhibitions often featured collaborative pieces with young, emerging artists he mentored at the Crestwood Center. One of his most celebrated works, A Seat for All, depicted a simple park bench surrounded by diverse figures, each holding a piece of a shared puzzle. Critics praised the piece for its profound simplicity and universal message. Jordan also authored a memoir, The Bench Where It Began, chronicling his and Liam's journey. The book became a bestseller, taught in classrooms as a testament to the power of resilience and activism. Liam's Stand Tall program expanded nationwide, with chapters in dozens of cities. His focus remained on mentorship, particularly for young people navigating challenges in underserved communities. Many of his mentees went on to become activists, lawyers, and community leaders. During a televised interview, Liam was asked what drove him to continue his work. "Because every kid deserves someone to believe in them," he said. "I had that in Jordan. Now I want to be that for others." Harper Carter Park became a national landmark, attracting visitors who came to reflect, learn, and be inspired. Its annual Gathering of Hope evolved into a week-long festival celebrating activism, art, and unity. Each year, a new bench was unveiled, dedicated to individuals or groups who had made significant contributions to the fight for justice. One year, a bench was dedicated to Ethan Gray, by then a renowned journalist. Ethan had never stopped uncovering stories that needed to be told. The plaque on his bench read, "For shining a light where others looked away." Maya Bennett, who had become a prominent figure in civil rights law, received her own bench a few years later. The dedication ceremony brought together figures from across the movement, including Jordan and Liam. Maya, always modest, insisted the honor was unnecessary. "The real heroes are sitting on the first bench," she said, gesturing to Jordan and Liam. "I just helped them fight their fight." As they grew older, Jordan and Liam continued to visit Harper Carter Park, though their visits became quieter, more reflective. On the 25th anniversary of the trial, a special ceremony was held in their honor. Dignitaries, activists, and members of the community gathered to celebrate their enduring legacy. During the ceremony, Jordan addressed the crowd. When Liam and I sat on that bench all those years ago, we had no idea what would come of it. He said, we just knew we couldn't give in to fear or hate. Today, seeing all of you here, I know we made the right choice. Liam stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The world isn't perfect, he said, there's still so much to fight for. But looking out at all of you, I know the fight is worth it. Every step, every struggle, it's worth it. As the sun set over the park, Jordan and Liam took their seats on the original bench. Around them, children played, families picnicked, and the hum of life filled the air. It was a scene of peace, one they had fought so hard to create. Liam glanced at Jordan, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Do you think we've done enough? He asked, echoing the question he had asked so many times before. Jordan didn't hesitate. We did what we could, he said, and we helped others do the same. That's enough. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, their bond as unshakable as ever. Their story had inspired countless others. But for Jordan and Liam, it always came back to the simple act of standing tall when it mattered most. They had turned their pain into progress, their struggle into hope, and their friendship into a legacy that would endure for generations to come.